Hello, my name is Adi Suresh, and I am in R3704 3D scanning, and this is my Henderson scan cleanup workflow. I first began by going through the original Faro scan, and as you can see, it's the bottom floor of Henderson. I then head into the hallway into the conference room where I can see my table. Now, as we can see, the table is somewhat scanned, however, it's missing a lot of its key features like the metal bearings, the legs, and a lot of the stuff that makes it well detailed. So I had the original size and shape to go off of. However, not too much of the fine detail and the texturing and the coloring that make it so special. So what I decided to do was use the images that I used as photo reference to try to mimic it as closely as possible, utilizing the size seen in the scale. So I took what I saw in my images and I recreated it to what you see here. It is the legs with the metal, with the shapes as closely as they can be, all in proportion to the size of the room, thanks to the scan that was given. From there, I then looked at my different models in various perspectives to do the UV mapping, where I selected my faces and did the automatic method. I then combined the various sections and labeled them with different Lamberts with different names, so that then I could transport it into Substance Painter 3D. And then I utilized various wood textures and metal textures and try to get the grime on there, but this table wasn't actually very dirty in real life. From there, I took it into Substance Stager where I was able to export it as the necessary files and got the lighting down as best as I could. For my next model, we're up in the second floor of Henderson where I am modeling the light switch on the wall inside the room 208. So for this, I mainly just created a flat plane with some curved objects. The biggest thing was texturing, so the UV was important. The light switch had a nice UV where everything just worked in automatic, and I grouped all the objects together as needed. I then took it into Substance Painter, where I projected over top of the model my already existing reference image, like we did with the shell and toy. From there, I then took it into 3D, Stager, messed with the lighting, and exported it as the GTLF file. The GTLF file, I used these reference images to get the shape of needed, especially for the texture. That was the biggest part of this model. And then from there, I got these two textures. My next object I created was also in the second floor of Henderson in room 208. As you can see the scan once again. If we enter the room and we take a right, we can see that I created the projector switch. So the switch that helps the projector go up and down. And the object was not too hard to scan. There was already a decent shape on the wall to follow, and my reference images came into play really well. The UV mapping for this piece was relatively simple. A lot of it was the same material, and so it only took a few faces of maybe two to three materials that I needed to differentiate, which I UV mapped with the automatic tool, and then took into Substance Painter here. As you can see, it's very few textures, if at all. From Substance Painter, I then took it into Stager and exported my GTLF file. For my last model, I modeled the double doors that you see here in the first floor of Henderson. But it's in the hallway, so it's the door that gets you to the outdoors. So here is the model, and here is the scan that I was given, and then here is my hard model. The hard model fit really well into the scan, and so I was grateful for the geometric shapes. The UV mapping for this piece was very simple. There were only about 3 different textures that I needed to utilize with the windows, the material of the door, and the 2 different types of metals that were being used, along with the outer rim. Then in Substance, I just utilized this plastic glass material and I painted on top of the different squares to try to give that glassy, polished look of the glass, and I messed with the color to give that look. None of my objects really had any sort of grime on it where I needed to apply the dirt filter. My reference images came into play a lot when it came to the curves and the intricacies of how the door opens and closes. That system at the top, I needed the references images for, but the scan helped for all of the geometric shapes and the proportion and the sizes. Finally, I took the piece into Substance 3D Stager, where I exported the GTLF file and came out with these textures. Thank you.